So, good morning, Dr. Allen. We welcome you to getting back to the basics of our schools and ourselves. And it's really just time to gather listeners, practitioners around the campfire to really learn from one another and hear about their journey because education is hard work. And we're thrilled to have you with us today. So, just kind of take a moment and introduce yourself to the listeners.
I'm Dr. Aaron Allen, Superintendent of Lincoln County Schools in North Carolina. This is my 28th year of education. I've been a superintendent since 2020, took over in the middle of COVID, but I've been with our district for 18 years in a variety of capacities. I was a former high school teacher and coach and athletic trainer, and I've kind of done everything in between up to getting to this job of being a superintendent. And, from that, I was also lateral entry. So I didn't do a traditional pathway to education. And so I've got a little different perspective of the journey that some of our folks take and just appreciate the opportunity to be with the Camp Explore today.
Thank you so much for joining us. And, all those um, hats that you've worn have created your foundation to how you approach your superintendency. Um, we are doing a assistant principal conference next week, and the title is All Paths Lead to Your Why. And so
Mhm.
no one in education has the same path or experience. And so you're absolutely right. We chose you for the chapter in the book that is the same title as the podcast. And your chapter is around unpacking your gear. And the backstory to that chapter is when we come into our role, we're bringing with us our mindset, our beliefs, our experiences, our habits, and sometimes even our assumptions. And so when we bring all that into our leadership, our teaching journey, it's going to have some type of impact. But we
Absolutely.
specifically chose you because as we've worked with you over the last couple years, we've been able to notice that there is a key element to your leadership style, and that is you really get to know your people so that you know what their strengths and their gifts are, and then you try to align that to what are the needs that exist and how can you best fit your people to the work to be done. And so that's why we chose you. And so today we just want to talk more about that and maybe have you start off by describing what, in your role, how do you help others unpack their
I
gear?
think I think from my perspective, the idea that we do recognize gifts and talents. We
Mhm.
do look at their learning style, their leadership style through a lot of different inventories. And then we try to, True Colors is one that we use often, and I don't try to pair all the blues in an admin team together because I need people to complement each other. But they'd have a lot of fun together, but they probably wouldn't get a lot of their checklists done, right? And so in the idea of putting a blue and a yellow together, they can have a good balance of moving the ship forward and having fun on Lido deck at the same time. But I say it from that perspective. That's just one of our tools. But we've done a lot of leadership training. We do a lot of intentional PD with our assistant principals that's different from our principals to try to prepare them. We have taken the approach too that our assistant principals are generic assistant principals, and the idea that we need to teach them the full opportunity of what it means to be an admin and not kind of pigeonhole them in an instructional role or an administrative role. We used to do that, but we found that those principals that were elevated up to the principalship and only had one aspect of an assistant principal, especially in secondary, that they were missing out on kind of half of the job preparation to make them a very even more effective principal. So we try to every year rotate some of those duties internally. We also don't really value fruit basket turnover from an administrative lens. We want people to really embed 3, 5, 7 years. I've got some principals that have been a principal 12 and 14 years in the same building, and AP teams that just really can have time to mold and to gel together and learn. We try to not move before 3 years if possible, just so we can let change happen and let people feel comfortable in leading in a space. We also value the fact that I expect our adults to lead within our region and within our state, we have goals that says, I expect Lincoln County to be up and out. And if there's a conference and you want to present at a national conference, apply and we'll celebrate when you go there because there's value in presenting and learning and going and doing and representing us well. The other thing I think that really helps with us is my longevity here. I've been 18 years in this district as an employee, from an assistant principal and principal to HR to everything non-instructional down to the superintendent. And we are the largest employer in our county by far. We have about 2,000 employees, part-time and full-time. And at one point, I probably would have said I knew about 75 to 80% of their names because I was the gatekeeper in HR and I got to know a lot of people that way. Now I probably don't know as many in that percentage, but I probably know about 60 to 65% of our employees. And I know their story and I know who they are and their families and where their kids are and where they live. And that's important because then we connect on a personal level, and people here just don't feel like a number. They feel noticed. They feel different, and that goes over into our culture. We're very intentional about building our culture, and in our region of North Carolina, we're in the Charlotte metro area, and so we are very rural. Most of our county is considered rural, but live in a very urban metros community when you think of Charlotte and everything around it. And so we do stand out with doing things differently. Our community expects that to be done differently. And so a good example is, I try to, when we hire in a principal position, for instance, I will do a parent survey. I'll do a staff survey, and now we've done student surveys, and we want to know what they want in their leaders. And then from that feedback, we take that feedback and then we customize the interview process because we're looking to fill the gaps for what those folks want to see in their next person. And what is the attention need to be? And so instead of kind of having a stock interview process that's just carbon and copied and repeated for the next applicant, we really tailor those things. And so far, when we've done that, we've really hit the mark with making the right person be the right fit for that school and have great longevity. Now, is it perfect? No, but we tweak it. But the idea that we're giving voice to people and we're responsive to our community. In our county, we have 4 zones that are very unique, in their high school feeder patterns. And so, what the folks on the lake like, not necessarily people in the country like. And so,
Mhm.
I say that because we really operate 4 zones independent of each other, but yet collaborate.
Mhm.
We have a lot of autonomy, and so there's a lot of trust that I give our leaders in our 23 schools. Um, and there's not a lot of top down because I try to let their strengths and gifts kind of rise up and play out in the unique ways that they need to. And I'm saying that I'm doing this. We have modified processes and systems that have been in place for 30 years. This district's been rooted in the TQE movement back in the 90s. And so that whole continuous improvement model has kind of been embedded for everybody who has come through this district for the last 20 or 30 years. And we're not technically total TQE right now, but we have hints of using those components in our leadership. And I think all of that makes recognizing people's talents important because you need to cultivate their individual plans, so to speak. And we have very individual plans. I mean, to the point of there's very little that I say district wide, you have to have this goal. But there is an expectation that you have a personal goal along with your school stuff. So a lot of that just voice and choice, but also tailored to be an individual, to have an individual component is time consuming. Sure, we talk a lot about effective versus efficient, and it's both depending on how you look at it. But really, we hone in on what's effective more than what's efficient. And I think people get tired of me saying that phrase a lot. But if you really do that and you focus on your systems and you let
Right.
people grow in a system and modify and tweak it, and we say it a lot, success is in your systems, right? And if you're not getting the results you want, then evaluate your system. And we do a lot of that evaluation. And I find myself loving the space of leading and helping
Mm.
people lead better. I kid all the time, I'm not your instructional person. I'm just not, right? But I found that my niche and how I contribute to this district is in growing leadership. in
Hmm.
our students and our staff and in our district leaders as well. And we really pay attention to succession planning. So I'm looking at giving a lot of people a lot of looks so they
Hmm.
can see the district perspective, not
Right.
just their building perspective, because I need people to be ready one day to step up. So we're constantly feeding people this or another person this. We see this gift and talent over here, so we're going to push them and encourage them to grow in this space because one day we could use that at the district level. So there's just a lot there, and I could keep talking, and I am a talker. Um, but in the end of the day, I think our people have responded well. Our teacher leaders, and that's the other thing that we have really embraced the idea of practitioners in the classroom, staying in the classroom, but being a teacher leader in that building, in the academic space and in the culture space, helping support the principal. And this is not just a principal's job to lead. It's not by the title. You know, we really value leadership for all. And in that, recognize that leadership really is about influence, and everyone can influence someone in the right way or the wrong way. And so when
Right.
you think
One or
about it
two.
that way, we're cultivating their influence and giving them capacity to grow in that influence. And that's what's fun to watch, as people who maybe sheepishly agree to something and then they start flourishing when they see that it's not like they thought, but they really are getting something, but they're also giving something.
Absolutely. You had a lot of good talking points there, and I was like, I'm not going to remember all of them. It was so good. But the time you talked about the time it
Yeah.
takes to build those relationships, but that's where the longevity of people staying, not just staying in their role or staying for the paycheck, but they're staying as a committed teammate. And that speaks volumes. So yes, are you going to put the time in on the front end or are you going to put the time in on the back end? And still knowing that there are large districts that still offer autonomy, that's huge because it has gotten very compacted. And so, being a former principal from a district where they wanted every school in the district to be doing the same thing in the same way, and number one, everyone's leadership style isn't that way, but every school doesn't have the same needs. And that was very stifling to try to operate in the confines of what might work better for my sister school down the road.
Yep.
So you the those two things in general, when you said the voice and choice, but it's more than that. It's the space to be able to take what it is that you have in your backpack and your gear and to utilize it to the best of your ability. And so that definitely sets you apart as a leader. It sets your district apart. Your principals are committed and they're happy, and you are trying to grow. You're very aware that the principals aren't going to be here forever. They're going to get on that retirement ship as soon as it's ready to come to port, right? And so to be able to have your folks prepared and
Yeah.
ready to step in, that's also part of that longevity. So you have a mission, you have a vision, so it's not just aligning your people with their gifts and talents, it's aligning your systems, and you spoke to that,
Mhm.
aligning your systems to your mission, your vision, your goal, and the big picture of we want our people healthy and happy so they can best serve our students. So, would you share with us maybe what's been one of your more challenging systems that you've had to work through as a district?
A good example would be, and this is my response to that is really the idea that I've had to say this phrase: "Be careful what you ask for," because there's comfort in being told, right? There's comfort in a top-down directive
Mhm.
that, I can always blame somebody else, or hey, they made me do it, or the county office said. At the end of the day, most challenging system that we've getting people to feel comfortable in that autonomy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're a brand new principal, you kind of want to be told what to do. So I don't misstep and misfire, which I understand. But we provide a lot of coaching early on for the first year, second year of as a principal. And even when they move levels, or if they're a veteran principal but are going to a new place, we provide them a peer coach and and a district level person to provide that sustainable opportunity to say, hey, let's check that idea with me first before you kind of go off the deep end. There was a time where a lot of people were wanting the district to
Mhm.
make the decision. And I think coming out of COVID, that's where I was like, hey, what, hold on. Y'all are capable of leading in independent ways when we know we all are going to get to the same destination. I'm giving you the chance to take your own path. You all don't need to take the same path. But then our communities start comparing one path to the other, and well, this school did this. Why can't our school do this? Well, because our teacher leaders didn't think that was the path to take, and be okay in that space.
Mhm.
And it's taken me a few years to say I have confidence in your abilities. And
Right.
this is, I think, another lingering post-COVID effect is
Yeah.
that we did so much direct instruction from the leadership perspective. You have to do it this way. You have to turn left. You have to turn right. You have to all go the same path, and you have to stay 6 feet apart. That for that year-ish
Mhm.
reaction, people found comfort in it. One, I think, even though we didn't like it, we found comfort, and we were pushing in-person instruction. We were pushing the envelope to get people back. We don't value virtual here. We value in-person instruction. We think our people are our best commodity and that they're our investment. We don't invest in stuff, we invest in people, right? So if we're investing in people, I trust you. And
Yeah.
we're trying to cultivate that. This is the challenge. Really getting people to trust each other, trust their teammate, trust their principal, trust the perspective and the narrative and the reasoning and the all those
Process.
yeah all those
Yeah.
things that are swirling in our head that we're like that create self-doubt and doubt in others. It's that's the biggest challenge right now because everybody's in a skepticism kind of mentality, and I was born an optimist, and I continue to be an optimist. And there's I'm not going to say I'm Pollyanna by any means, but there's a little bit of pessimism that sneaks in sometimes, and I have to check myself. But at the end of the day, we hire good people and I
Mm-hmm.
give them the tools to do their job and I trust them to do their job. And when they can't, we help support them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means support them up and sometimes it means support them out, right? But at the end of the day, we're not looking to just move them out right initially. And so that's one of the hallmarks I think for us. We just got a report back from the state, and this isn't boisterous by any means, but didn't even really know this existed. But we are in the top five of the state consistently for retention of our employees. And so
Wow.
for us, we're the largest system by far that has been able to have low or high retention rate of their employees. And so that was a great point for us to brag on our people, right? Of what we're doing to keep people here, especially in an economy that values the higher pay somewhere else. And we're not the highest paying district in our area by far, but we are able to keep our people. And I think that goes back to the culture and the voice and choice that we give people when they come here, but it is getting people to buy into that it's okay to have a voice, so to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
in some of my communication with other people around the state, that's not always the case, right? And so it's almost kind of like, I won't say scripted, but everyone has to do, as you mentioned, everyone
Yeah.
has to do certain things the same way.
Hard.
And that for us is never kind of been the case here. And I think it takes people a little bit to say, okay, it really is different here. And it's okay. I can grow in my own space. I can develop my skills in this way, and they're okay with that. Now, if it fails, we're going to double back and help fix it. But there's even when I was here as an AP, there was always a spirit of it's okay to take risk and experiment if you have the research and the reasoning behind it to back up your calculated risk, as long as it's not doing damage and you're tracking data throughout, right? I mean, there's some parameters that we do, and we're becoming more data centric and not
Mhm.
there's and I say that because there's not a shortage of data by any means, but it's how we're paying attention to the data, how we're
Yeah.
tracking our
How we're
progress on our
using.
data, right?
Right.
And we're setting goals and we're celebrating the wins and we're moving on and setting more goals and we're tracking things in a way that is connected instead of
Mm-hmm.
just looking at data here, data here. And so I say that if you were my teacher and you wanted to start tracking A, B, and C, and I'm over here doing H, I, and J,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. And we're eventually our data is going to meet at later on in the process to kind of say we're supporting each other, or we're supporting the vision of the school, or we're supporting the vision of the district or the goal of the district. And so I say, oh, that's a long answer, but the system, that's whole umbrella of a system has been a challenge as we bring new people on. It takes them a minute to assimilate and realize that, oh yeah, I can
Right.
really do this here.
Right. And the trust factor, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Without trust, you have nothing.
Correct.
And for your new people coming in, it's probably an oddity that the trust is so high and the trust is extended first. And it's not that the loyalty has to be earned before you're given trust. You give trust right out of the get-go. And that, being in the top five of the state, that is something, especially right now, because 10 years ago, teacher turnover rate was the alarm, and now admin turnover rate is exceeding teacher turnover rate. And so, for you to have that high of retention, that speaks volume. But you're absolutely right. Most people, when we say, what's your system challenge, and they're gonna, well, maybe it's looking at data, maybe it's, how we're onboarding staff, but you just went right to the root of the matter, which is the trust in the systems, trust in the process, trust in your people, let them trust in you. Like that, you can't put a price on that.
Well,
But
and to that, I've started something a couple of years back, probably about 3 years now. I meet with all the beginning, not beginning, all the new employees that we hire at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And my first couple of years, I didn't do it, and even in my other roles, I didn't do it this way. But I'm very transparent. It's like it's almost like this is us.
Yeah.
And I kick off that first meeting was like, welcome to Lincoln County. This is who we are. And I go through a series of comments, and I'm like, you know what? If you, I'm not looking for you to raise your hand. But I'm
Mhm.
going to tell you, if you can say I believe and I support, and we're in alignment with about 75% of those or more, then
Mhm.
you're going to have great time here. You're going to have longevity here. But if you're in
Yeah.
that 50% mark, give us a year, and I'm going to see if I can move the needle. And if you don't really believe in anything I just said, then we're probably going to be a one and done.
Yeah.
And it's not
Might
that
need
you're
to
not
update
good.
that contract.
It's not that it's not you're not going to be good. You might be the great teacher, but I'm very focused here,
Yeah.
and our principals have really learned that I'm hiring for culture first. I'm hiring
Mhm.
for curiosity of an employee. I'm hiring for how they have chemistry with people. And then I'm hiring for competence because I can teach competence. I can't teach those other skills. Those have to be kind of born and bred and naturally developing. And if you've got the highest growth in the of your grade level in your school and from out of state, but your references say she doesn't like to play well with others, or
Mhm.
or he can't get beyond a lesson plan in today because he's still living and he's not curious to learn anything different, or he's not really a good employee, he likes to be by himself, we're probably not going to hire him
Right.
because we're looking to build our system to be different. And so I tell people that, and they look at me like I'm crazy. And I said, the county next door is hiring all the time. You feel free to go
Okay.
next door,
Okay. All
but
right.
we're serious about our culture, and in that culture breeds trust. And so when I'm up front like that and tell people, and it seems kind of odd in a school system, you're not looking for the best teacher, the highest performing teacher. Not really. I'd rather take a middle of the road or a beginning teacher that I can mold,
Mm-hmm.
and is a sponge and is curious and is a good colleague and is coachable. That's the number one thing too.
Yeah.
If I can keep somebody that's coachable.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I want to point out too is you mentioned the word longevity.
Mm-hmm.
I do an exercise every year with our new folks, and especially our new admin teams when they're new combination, and I take them through a core values exercise. And it's a lot of words, and like let's whittle down from 30 words down to 3 to 5, and let's talk about what your core values are. And for me, every year I've done this, loyalty was a core value.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I go back to my HR days, but over time, I had a light bulb go off in my brain about 5, 6, 7 years ago when I realized loyalty didn't mean tenure.
Yeah.
Loyalty meant tenure to me before. Now loyalty is if I've got you for 2 or 3 years, then you're loyal to me and you're going to bust your behind and you're going to get after it. And every day you're going to give me 100%. And I'm going to get the best out of you as long as I have you. And I'd rather take you at 2 or 3 years at 100% than have somebody 15 years at 50%.
That's
And
right.
so and if you need to leave to go somewhere else because of whatever, I'll support you and I'll give you the best reference, right? And that's loyalty to me now because while I've got you, I've got you.
That's right.
And before, I used to get a little sideways when people would leave, and I'd get a little bitter because I valued loyalty meant longevity.
Uh-huh.
And so when I tell people that, it's kind of like they're off the hook a little bit because they're not
Hmm.
signing away their life over here, but they know
Uh-huh.
that while you're here, I expect you to get after it because our kids can't afford you not to get after it. And our
That's right.
kids are our most valuable commodity in our district. We have 11,500 kids
Hmm.
pre-K to 12. And I expect that same kind of vigor every day from all of our employees. And so I'm very transparent with that up front. And if people can buy into that, then we'll get along. And most of the
Yeah.
time, I think that's part of the retention piece, right? Like I'm letting people know up front, this is who we are. Sometimes this is not for everybody. If it isn't,
You're naming it and you're claiming it
right.
instead of just letting them come in to this space and figuring it out, right? And I was grinning from ear to ear because that last part of your comment reminded me of my first principalship. And I moved from a district I had been in for close to 20 years to a brand new district. So I didn't know that many people. And I had only been in the district 2 years before I moved into the principalship. And so I'm like, I'm going to interview every single person. Like I need to get to know them because I don't know their backstories. And I had a lady come in, her arms were crossed. She's like, I'm just here to tell you, I got 180 days and I'm out of here. And I just remember thinking, okay, Dana, watch your face. And I looked at her and I just smiled as sincere as I could. And I said, okay, great. Tell me how those are going to be the best 180 days of your entire teaching career. And the look on her face was like, what? Like you expect me to work while I'm here? And I said, I can see that question threw you for a loop and you need a little bit more think time. No worries. Go take the night, think about it. How's this going to be the best 180 days of your teaching career? Because I really want to know because I want to support you in that journey. And she did. She came, it took her more than one night. She took about 2 or 3 nights and she came back and she said, I really you caught me off guard. And I said, did I? I'm really sorry. I said, but we're all in this together and I just can't have you on our boat just working on your tam while the rest of us are rowing. And she said, I really had to give your questions some thought, and this is my commitment to you for the next 180 days. And Dr. Allen, when you talked about culture, and you talked about getting to know your people, that employee stayed on for 3 more years. She didn't count those. Her mindset shifted from, I need to stop counting down my days and I need to see what kind of impact I'm making. And so I was grinning when you said that because we are evidently cut from the same cloth because we both have had that conversation. There's a door. Let me help you. No, no worries. I think the other thing that resonates with me as a leader that I see and appreciate in you is that when you recognize, and you spoke to this before, like if someone's struggling to do their job, you want to be able to come in and support that in whatever means that may be. And so, one of the things I've enjoyed about working alongside of you is that you join the process of co-creating. You don't just say, oh, get this person to come in and help them, or they're on your team, you need to help them. You really do rally the troops and you co create what you believe might be the missing link to helping your people. Can you speak a little bit about what that process means to you, or what is the overview of how you go about that? Because you really
Yeah. So
customize it.
yeah, and I appreciate that, but the idea that I know I've got something to contribute, I know I don't have the only thing to contribute, and so the idea that I've got in my brain, I'm more of the I've learned to be in this space. I've learned to be more of the big idea person. I
Mhm.
wasn't that earlier, and so that's a skill I've tried to be very intentional on. That I've got a destination I know I want to get at, and I know a rough picture of what I want it to look like, but I know I'm missing the components up here to be able to plug the holes or paint the full picture. So I've got great people that at certain times, to your point, I'll say, I need to invite you into this space and have this conversation. Let's work on this together. And we do that well. I've got about 14 people on my leadership team that is the direct group. And then I've got about 28 total in a kind of a next layer of group. But then I'm also not void enough to think that our principals and APs and teachers don't need to be a part of some of those conversations. And we have valued in probably the last 10 years more than others, really getting to the end user. And
Mm.
so if this is a decision we're making, who's it going to impact? And then have we talked to them? Have we gotten a representative sample of that population, whether it's the teacher, whether it's the student, whether it's the AP? Whether it's whatever. And so we really are intentional pulling some representatives in to kind of feed off of that. The other piece to thinking about this is I mentioned zones earlier. I've the last couple of years we've started developing again leadership opportunities. I've got four zones, so I've got four assistant principals that are leading one per zone, leading their assistant principal group. I've got four principals that are leading their principal group, and you're like, well, what do they talk about? I don't know. They have an agenda. They make
Uh-huh.
it. I
Yeah.
see it on the backside, but they're planning things together. They're working on coordinating efforts, whether it's through mentors. High school students to elementary school, whether they're going to do a community carnival, and where they're going to do it, what's going to happen, and who's going to plan it. And most of the time, our students are planning these events and with those principals kind of guidance in that piece. But it's also looking at data, looking at community data, looking at discipline trends in a community. And this part is very different from this part. And how can they work with families? Do we start seeing families that are in stress that we need to send the social worker out to this whole family and not just kind of one at three different levels? And so working the zones, I'm giving our leaders different looks at leading a group outside of their building, working from the district lens to support them. And in that capacity, just living in a space where we are trying to build a smaller community that's that school within a school model.
That's right.
We're the largest employer, like I said, but we're by far like the 30 something largest district in the state. And when I think about that, it's kind of amazing that there's a lot smaller than we are. So we're trying to create smaller communities within our big district that makes sense that we can be community responsive. So, at the end of the day, all of this kind of factors into how we lead and how we collectively gather input from the field. And in doing that, we try to be as proactive as we can. We try to look ahead 2, 3, 4 months, gather our data, and have a good time to plan so we're not always in reactive mode. That's the one thing that I think this job has afforded me to be is more of a proactive planner.
Mm-hmm.
And in my other roles, I've always had to be the reactive one.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
balance I'm probably more 70-30 proactive, reactive, whereas I'm in HR, I was probably 80 reactive, 20 proactive. Just because of the nature and kind of my development at the time. I think it's still possible to allow yourself the space to be more proactive because
Mm.
you control your own calendar. That's one thing I tell them all the time. You control your time. So
That's right.
you let the creepers come in and suck your time up, that's on you. Or you put in systems in place where you have some, what we like to call block and tackles. You got to have those people that do that for you and protect your time so you can remain in a proactive state. Because none of us like to feel stressed and reactive. And in that, I say that because all this plays into the answer that you ask.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to just be a part of it because part of it is I'm leading it. Part of it is
Right.
I'm coaching in it. And so
Hmm.
I'm involved sometimes. I'm simply involved sometimes to just to observe others and
Hmm.
then coach them in that in their feedback of how they act in that space. And that's part of my transition planning because of our leadership that is getting toward your retirement. You talked about that earlier. We've got a very um, senior staff. And
Hmm.
so when I'm intentionally coaching people in a space, I'm preparing them to be the next leaders of the district. And so I may involve them in ways that is purely selfish because I
Yeah.
need them to understand this for 3, 5 years from now. They understand the bigger picture when they've not been exposed to a bigger picture. And so um, part of our work with y'all is really to build capacity because the ideas that you bring really are allowing them to kind of put the action to the theory. And in
Mhm.
doing that, I want to make sure that, the school's getting the actionable things that they need to make the connections make sense to the theory, to the relevant terminology, or to the ideas that are just simply still ideas. And that's where we try to make it all happen in a cohesive way that can be sustainable. Does that make
That's
sense?
right.
Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. And I was working with one of your principals recently, and she was talking about how she truly believes in an open door policy and she just wants to be available because if her teachers can get the answer, then she knows they can move on. And yet at the same time, what preceded that conversation was feeling like she was always playing catch up and never getting anything done. And I was like, so by you serving everyone else, you're not able to serve yourself in your role. And she went, well, yeah. Like I said, so why don't we just look at your system for what you can have an open door policy, but you also need to have some preserve time for yourself to take care of some of those things. But it was just the look on her face was priceless. And the you spoke to this, you yourself are also a continued learner. You
Mhm.
don't approach things as if because I'm the superintendent I know better. You are such a learner at heart, and so you like to get in and you like to learn alongside of them. What how do you, or maybe what has come out of your learning that's helped you change in your role? And you spoke to this a little bit, but I want you to go a little bit deeper with that.
So I want to. I'll get to that answer in a minute. But
Okay.
I also teach as an adjunct professor in a school administration program, and so I've been doing that since 2018. And I say it. This is the pre-answer to your question.
Uh,
I'm continually learning from my students as I have a new cohort every semester, and I
yeah.
teach the principalship class and I teach the intro into school administration. And knowing that they're all coming from 11 counties ish around this area, and everyone's very different, and their pathway is to the potential job of an administrator is very different. I learn something every semester from many students that I am able to take, and it's like, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about it that way. Let's take that and see how where I think this would work at this school. Let me da da da, and I make the connection with our people. And so I realized that I was doing that
Uh-huh.
shortly after I became the superintendent. Is that I was like, okay, this is a freebie over here. I need to take advantage of all this brain power. I have anywhere from 11 to 19 students every semester. So and I've been doing it since 18. So you do the math.
Yeah.
Fast forward to in this district for my continual learning, um, it's essential because I realize I don't know. I'm still learning this job, and now I'm in it 6 years. And there are parts that I feel like I'm finally hitting my stride.
Mhm.
But I also know that the district that I started with in 2003, I told you I was here 18 years. I have two kind of stints in this district. I came in '03 as assistant principal, was here until '06, and then left to go to a different county, and I came back here in 13.
Mhm.
But the county I came here in 2003
Mhm.
is very, very different than today, just like everything has changed. And so our demographics, as we call it, the Charlotte sprawl happens. Our communities are changing. Our communities' needs are changing. We're growing. We're the fastest growing county in 2025 in North Carolina. Our population density is booming. It's crazy to think that 50 years ago we were at 30,000 residents in our county, and
Yeah.
this year we're at just short of 100,000 residents. So we have grown a lot proportionally, and mostly in this last couple of years because of the Charlotte sprawl. And the economy's great, North Carolina, and number one state for doing business. So there's a lot of people that are moving here. My reason to really have to continue to grow is um, we have to stay relevant, to stay um, responsive. We have great community partners here, our economic development, our nonprofit partners, our hospital partnership. We've been able to really grow and make some unique opportunities for our kiddos here. And if we're not staying relevant to the needs and to the issues that are up, but also, a good example is I could put my head in the sand about AI, but that's not
Yeah.
going to help us be responsive to the future, right? And so the relevancy factor is there. Not everything has to, you know, be developed out fully. We choose to not do a lot of things that our neighbors are kind of jumping into. And I say neighbors here and across the state. We are very slow to change. We're more of a refiner of things that are continually working. But the tweaks are where we educate. Why do we need to tweak this part? Well, this is because this is what the research is saying now, or this is what the state is providing us with data on, and so we need to do better. A good example we talked about this week is we have some literacy coaches in our school, and in some of our schools, our literacy coaches are in the upper grades in elementary. But what we're finding is our K2 literacy needs are vastly different than the fifth grade teacher skill set. And so we're rethinking, okay, based on our data, based on what the research is showing, based on the fact that, our K2 literacy is if we're more proactive on the front side, then that pays dividends more on the backside. We may rethink how we do our coaches and some parameters we put into that. So we're always kind of being able to be flexible. There's not a lot of dust on things. I'll say that. We typically pick up things and look at it often. And I think by doing that organizationally and internally, that just means that I have to continually be learning as well. And we do book studies. We do conversations. We do some PD with y'all and some other vendors that allow us the opportunity to grow in a space that's relevant at the time, as opposed to just sitting back and on coast. And I think it's not necessarily about modeling learning, but it kind of
Right.
is. If we're not willing to continually learn, why do we, when we're not forcing, we're not putting ourselves in the position that we put teachers into sometimes when we mandate certain PDs. But one of the things that I think is special for us is that there is an expectation that if we have a grade level PD, that
Hmm.
principal or assistant principal is expected to be right there with them, so they learn what their teachers are having to learn, so they know what to be able to help support. But there's also the expectation that our district level folks are in there as well, and so we're showing support, but we're also learning beside them. And that's not 100% across the board, but it is. You're expected to represent that in your space and be alongside of your people. And walk with them and support them along the way and learn something too. And so that's just become an expectation. And then that is top down. And so if I expect everyone under me, the other 19 or 1,999 other employees to do it, then I need to
Yeah.
do it too.
But I don't know that you give yourself and your district enough credit with that because that is what sets you apart. It's not a do as I say, or that's the mandate, or that's the district way. This is who we are. We're all going to learn this together, which goes right back to what you said at the beginning, and that is something that has resonated with me. Yes, your principals are in there, your APs are in there, and your district people are in there. If that isn't a strong chain, I don't know what else is. And so I think it feeds, just a great summary to everything that we've talked about and why you're getting the results that you're getting. As we come to a close, is there anything you would say to, it could be a new superintendent, it could be a tenure superintendent, it could even be principals or administrators, when we talk about one of the things that is a behavior pattern for administrators or schools in general, we hold on to things
Mm.
because of tradition or it's always been done that way. Any final thoughts or words about removing those things that no longer serve? Like why are we so hesitant to let go of things?
I think that's probably rooted in a little bit of fear, a little bit of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
There's an expectation to not let go of things, maybe sometimes because if it's working, keep doing it. But the idea that if I go back to that TQE, the total quality educator philosophy is continuous improvement, and you can't continuously improve if you stay still.
That's right.
And if you can't continuously improve if you keep doing the same thing. And so I'm not saying you throw everything out, but I will say in the last couple of years, there's so much stuff that we do that we are burning ourselves out. And in some of our high need schools, we burn out a lot faster rate. And so we've tried to simplify. We've tried to like, okay, look, you've got all these options. Focus on the big rock. Focus on that one or two things that are going to get the best yield. And if these over here are not getting you a high yield, then let's cut them off. I mean,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
and then the idea too that our instructional folks are looking at resource overload and really
Mhm.
what can we pare it back and just say, look, these are all available, but these are the five biggies we recommend. If you want to use
Mhm.
other ones, go for it. But at the end of the day, we're trying to help be a filter for you to help
Yeah.
see the forest for the trees a little bit. And in that capacity, giving people permission, as I said earlier, that I was given permission as a young principal to make calculated risk and to say, you know what, I'm going to close the Chromebook. I'm going to say we're not going to use technology. I might go old school. In fact, I've got some
I-
interest now of principals saying, you know
No
what, I think,
tech Tuesday, no tech Thursday. Yes, it's
and
a
I've
real
got
thing.
some that are like, I only want to pull them out for the formative assessments, and everything else we're going back old school. There's a
Right.
little bit of applause in my heart for that, but there's also a little trepidation. I worry that sometimes our teacher prep programs, I've asked this questions locally, making sure that they're producing new graduates that are comfortable teaching what we consider old school and
Right.
not relying on the technology tools that are prevalent today. But, the pendulum is definitely swinging. And so that's a good example. We didn't use Chromebooks before until COVID. And then
That's
all of a
right.
sudden we feel like we can't do anything without them. But unfortunately, I would say sometimes a Chromebook addiction can mask a weak teacher sometimes, and so we have to be able to pull that back and say, how are you using it as a tool? It's not a replacement. You heard me say before, we value face-to-face instruction. We value our people. We value people over programs, and so it is getting people to feel comfortable in a space where a program's kind of filled a void for a while and coaching them backwards. Coaching them is kind of like that addiction. I hate to say it, but we're going to go through a withdrawal phase. We're going to go through like I've always used this, and but maybe this tool just isn't relevant anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I think sometimes with football is a great example. Both of my boys played, and you think about the evolution of the football helmet, and you think about the evolution of the pads. We would think it's crazy today for a kid to play in a leather strapped helmet and not have all this stuff up here protecting their noggin. And yet that was met with some controversy. And so if we don't stay relevant to the changes, we are, I think, doing a disservice to our kids. And going back on the pendulum swing of the technology, I don't think the answer is going put it up because
Right.
we're in a digital world where these kids need to know how to do it and use it in the right way and use it in an ethical way. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that if that's not tested, it doesn't get taught. And so we've got to figure out a way to infuse responsibility and responsible use in that capacity. And so there's a little bit of a rebound and sometimes a difference of opinion. And I'll say that we value the difference of opinion because if we can listen to both sides and come up with a third solution, that's probably the better one to take anyway. But all that to say is we're not perfect in that space by any
Mhm.
means, but we're constantly trying to get better at it. And I think that's the key that for a superintendent or a principal or anybody, you just have to be willing
Mhm.
to be vulnerable, to
Right.
listen, to be wrong and admit it and then learn from it. And in your own world, you be coachable.
That's
And
right.
who coaches the superintendent? Well, your board, your principals,
Uh-huh.
your staff, your community. And this is one of the things that some of my colleagues think I'm an idiot for, but when I do when I get every year at the end of the year since I've been a superintendent, I have sent out a survey to every principal, every assistant principal, and central office leader, and even our central office staff, our secretaries, everybody. And
Uh-huh.
I want your feedback for our board to use that to give me feedback on how to get better at me being the superintendent. And they're like, why do you open yourself to that level of accountability and scrutiny? Well, it's because I need that. I want to be able to serve better to all the people that I'm leading in this space. And I would expect you to do the same thing. So principals, are you getting teacher feedback for
Right. That's right.
yourself? Are you reflecting every year? We do a needs assessment every year for our school, but do we do it for ourselves? and there's a vulnerability to that, right? And some people don't like being vulnerable and they don't like that. But I think that is that has been the best thing for me. And if I could ever go back and be a principal again, and
Mhm.
maybe when I retire as a superintendent, I might go somewhere out of state and be a principal again because I think I would do so many things different from the
Yes,
start that as a young one, I just didn't know what to do or how to do or even think about doing.
that's right.
And that makes me a little excited because and I think that's why I'm so passionate in trying to infuse that into our principals now is all the things that I didn't do well. I'm trying to
That's
help them do well now,
right.
because I see the value in it because it just changes
Mhm.
culture. And I go back to that it's really everything I do, everything you do as a leader should focus on the culture you want to create.
That's
And
right.
you can't let culture happen by accident. It has to be an intentional
You can't
focus.
fake it. You cannot fake culture, but you have to cultivate it.
That's right.
And everything you just shared, really, you kept saying, you just got to simplify it. You got to be able to look at what's working, what's not working, all those things. Well, that is what getting back to the basics is.
Yeah.
Yes, we still need technology, but they still need to know how to talk to each other when they're learning something, actively process it, have academic discourse, right? We
Mhm.
so getting back to the basics for us is if you can root into some solid practices, whether it is for your school or for yourself personally, then it can grow you forward. And that, again, is why we chose you to be on our podcast because you truly are the epitome of a leader and a learner equally.
Mm.
One does not foreshadow the other. So thank you for spending time with us today.
You're welcome. I appreciate this opportunity to one to brag on my district and my people, but also to support y'all in your efforts because you have invested well in Lincoln County and we are better for it. And so anything I can do to help out Camp Explore, I will continue to do.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.